All right, Pez fans, thanks for joining us. Joining me in studio today is my guest, Yamina Enedahl, who you may not be familiar with her name right now, but you probably will become to know her sometime soon. She is an expert in performance psychology. She's a mental coach, and my ears first perked up when she told me that she was once a world record holder in free diving. So as I got to know Yamina and talk to her a little bit about what it takes to become a world record holder and an expert in performance psychology, obviously it made a lot of sense to me that readers and followers of our Toolbox column would be interested in any little piece of advice we can send your way as to how you can perform better on your bike through your daily activities and even in your life. So I thought Yamina would make an excellent guest on the Pez show today. So Yamina, thanks for joining us. Welcome to Pez Cycling News in our studio.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. So I want to do it just as by way of an introduction. You for sure stood out when you mentioned to me that you had the world record for free diving. I was like, okay, whoa. We had to pause right here because this is now super interesting. What's that all about? That must have been a fairly big deal. And tell our readers a little bit how that came about and some of the struggles that you went through to achieve that, because that's something that I think is a really good jumping off point for us in our conversation today.
Well, I used to be a professional swimmer before I became a free diver. And when I was a swimmer, I felt most of the time quite scared. I didn't really achieved what I was able to on training. So when I came to competitions and so on, I felt quite scared. And then I started doing free diving, and on my journey towards this world record, I also came in contact with the performance psychology. Actually, to me, it was like a life-changing experience to go from the environment that I had been in as a swimmer, and then trying to have the same strategy in free diving and noticing that I couldn't do that. So, for instance, my first record attempt, I failed so hard, and I felt so bad and actually unworthy. But this really hard record attempt also changed my life, because I noticed that the strategies of like pushing myself as hard as possible and talking to myself within my head in a strong way and a demanding way didn't work. But when I was relaxed, when I was happy, when I had like this conversation that was full of self-love and positive emotions and beautiful thoughts, then I could perform better than anyone could in the world. And I started to wonder how it came that it was such a big difference. I conquered myself during that record.
So it sounds to me a bit like you're talking about the power of positive thinking here, and you found a way to switch some of your thinking from what I understand was some sort of a negative thought process into a positive thought process. How did you do that? That's something that I think people struggle with all the time.
Yeah, I mean, this took, of course, some time, but what I did was that I tried out all the mental techniques that I learned during my studies. And I discovered, like, when I was trying them on myself, in the pool, where everything is silent and the only thing you actually can hear is your own thoughts, it became so clear to me what was actually working and what wasn't. I would say it was a matter of try and error, and also a mindset of learning from everything that will happen. So if I had like a bad training, then I thought okay, what can I learn from this training, and how can I take this knowledge and make something better out of it the next day. So I think also going from like this black and white thinking of like, now I have had a good training and a good competition, and now I have failed, and now I have come to the second place. Instead of being in that black and white, I started to go to learning. So instead of winning and losing or black and white, it's like learning is winning. Because if you learn from every situation, you will improve so much faster than if you stay in this black and white thinking.
What kind of team did you have around you when you were going through this? Like, did you have a coach were you working with, or was there family members helping you, or were you able to kind of sort this out on your own?
Well, I started with a trainer, but I decided to become my own coach. And actually, this was just in the beginning of competitive freediving, because the first World Cup was in 1998, and I started in year 2000. So actually, no one did really know how to train to become better in freediving. Of course, there were some scientific research on, breathing and breath holding and stuff like that. Most of the research was on like for military, for the military, but it was actually a time when we had to try everything from scratch because no one knew. So we were a team of friends, and all of us were like from different backgrounds, different personalities, and the thing we shared was the joy of freediving. So we started to train together.
So you guys were kind of writing the rule book as you went. But one thing too that I'm curious about, as a freediver, and you have to hold your breath for a super long period of time. Do you do you have, like, genetically, are you different? Do you have bigger lungs, or do you have a greater capacity than other human beings to be able to do this? Or is this something anybody could learn to do?
Anybody could learn to do that, because the lungs are, they are like, if you consume a lot of oxygen, you will have bigger lungs. And if your body is using less oxygen for doing different things, your lungs are smaller. But what you can say is that if you want to be like a world champion in breath holding, most of them, they are like very, very tall men with very, very big lungs. So like they are like, so they don't have a lot of muscles to take care of and like that.
Okay.
But when you look at the freediving community, on like there are like many different kind of freedivers and many different body types and so on.
The freedive record that you held, can you talk to me just a little bit specific about which one it was? When I first heard about it, I imagined you were diving down to the bottom of the ocean as far as you could go. But then I learned that there are actually different kinds of freediving records.
Yeah, exactly. So we can talk about the different disciplines as well. So there are breath holding, when you just lay on the surface and holding your breath for as long as possible. And then you have like the constant weight, when you swim down to find a tag, and then you swim up again. And then you have like the dynamic apnea, and that is when you swim as far as possible in the pool. So this was also my discipline where I made the world record.
What was the record that you set?
Well, it was swimming, like breaststroke, because there are also two different way of doing this. You can either go with the fins, like either the monofin or bifins, and then you can go just, breaststroking under the water. So it was like without fins, breaststroking. Okay. That was my world record.
Great. And how far did you go?
I went 97 meters.
Wow. So you held your breath for how long in that period?
I think it took me about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, something like that.
I think I remember as a kid having a breath holding contest with my brother, and I think I might have made it to about 45 or 50 seconds before my head turned blue and I almost passed out.
Yeah, I think there are so many more free divers than we think, because everybody has done that, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody has been picking up things from the bottom, or keeping
yeah,
their breath as long as possible, or swimming and competing with their friends who can swim the longest underwater. So
yeah.
I think like this is something that is very natural for humans, to be in the water and to swim
And to
and
see
to go
how long,
through them.
yeah, to see how long you can hold your breath for.
Exactly. And I think also this is the reason why freediving is such a good arena for mental training.
Here's the here. So you transitioned from this, you took what you learned and you transitioned yourself into being a coach and helping athletes and corporate groups and other groups. You've done some really interesting things with setting up your company for outdoor training conferences. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you transitioned then? You got a bigger idea of, okay, swimming, maybe you maybe went as far as you wanted to go there. Transition that into a career
Yeah.
in performance psychology.
I was starting with myself, to developing myself, and also to like discover what I think is like more of the truth when it comes to performance psychology, and how to think to be able to perform at your best, because we're also living in a society with a lot of myths about how we should do it that actually doesn't work. So what I discovered on my own journey was like the essence maybe of performance psychology, and also what is scientifically researched, if you look at it. And because there is a difference between the cultural, like the heritage we have, and the scientific part of it. So this was the first thing, and after that I started to coach team in sports. So and then it was too easy. When my teams, like for instance in football, were winning the Swedish national competition in Sweden, I was sitting there and I was just thinking like, okay, this is fun, but I want to contribute more to society. So then I started to coach teachers in school, in leadership, and I started to work on how to find cooperation between social service and the police and the society, to prevent like young people from going in the wrong direction, and how to cooperate to create something better there. So it has been like everything has been growing. Like I started with myself, and then it has been growing the whole time, but the principles and the mindset and the way of approaching humans has been in the same way. And this is, I mean, even though humans are individuals and different in that way, we also have a lot of similarities. So actually, it isn't a big difference between a child and a senior CEO mentally, because we have like the same needs, and mentally, and the same things that we need to be able to perform at our best. So I think that is my key, that people are people.
Can you identify or tell me a little bit about what are a couple of these things that you have seen with people that are maybe commonalities where or conditions that people perform their best at or maybe perform their worst at? What are some of those goalposts?
Well, I think like the biggest thing is like, how do you set the goal? That is of main importance, because if you do it in the traditional way, it will become very mechanic. Like for instance, the traditional smart model. It's very nice. If I read it to you, think about a factory now,
Okay.
uh, and that we're going to produce something. Then it's very nice if it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time based, right? It's
Right.
quite mechanic. But actually, this doesn't trigger the motivation very much. at least not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
if you think about a goal and that you have, and you make sure that it's really satisfying when you visualize it, like when you see yourself there, it's really satisfying. And it also brings out your motivation to fulfill, because this vision that you have is actually a better version of yourself. It's connected to your personal development. And you know that if I reach this goal, I will become a better version of myself. And if you have like an integrated goal, so that it's always within you, and that you set it in a way so that you can control it. It's not compared to anyone else, but you have set the goal so it's within your own circle of control. And when you think about all this, you have like this tickling feeling, almost like if you were in love. If you can set the goals like that, then you will also find a motivation for a long time.
Okay.
So I think like going from like this mechanical way of doing things to integrate, for instance, a sportsman, not only as someone who is supposed to achieve something, it's like not looking at this person as, just a card to play, but rather as a full human being with need, so that the person actually can develop. Then you have something more to gain there.
How you just described that just struck me in terms of how I was getting motivated for this interview, because I when I got the idea that you would be an interesting interview for Pez readers, I envisioned the completed project, and I envisioned, oh, this will be probably some really great information. Nobody's seen this in our sphere before. It'll be something new that I'm bringing to the table for my readers, and probably for a lot of cyclists. I could see what the finished product looked like, which I felt would be a really great place to be if I completed this project. And I proposed the idea to you, and we did this.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think like connecting it to the person you want to become.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So when I say that, like, how do you think that this interview or interviews can make you become the person you want to become? In what way?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I don't think I personally spend enough time thinking about who this person I want to become is, because I think I think what happens is I've been on the planet long enough that I'm like, oh yeah, I've already become that person, and I've stopped thinking about evolving or growing. But I am also aware, because of things that are going on in my life, I'm aware that I have not stopped evolving or growing, and that there are areas in my life that I would like to evolve and grow in more. But I do experience the challenge of getting bogged down in the day-to-day drudgery of doing tasks that don't seem related to the movement or achievement of some of these bigger goals. And I'll have my moments, or I'll have days where I feel like all I've done are tasks that just got me through the day, and I didn't really feel like I achieved anything. Can you talk a little bit about how to get away from that part of it and look more ahead to the motivational side of it?
Yeah. So what do you do that you love the most? And when do you feel that you are, in a place and where it feels like very meaningful, and when you feel happy?
I think a lot of it has come from getting positive feedback from readers on, we put an article out and it resonated with somebody, or we'll do a video and somebody, yeah, they liked it. So getting that positive feedback, I think, not just from readers, but from my family and from my friends and from anywhere, I find is probably for me something that is when I'm at my happiest, when I feel like, yeah, I've kind of done something that's been well received from
Yeah.
by other people.
So it's about like a contribution.
I guess it is a contribution to something. Even what we're doing at Pez Cycling is we're not saving the world. We're not solving any big problems. We're simply providing entertainment. And that's all it is. Really, I've always only ever thought of what we're doing as really entertainment. And I started the website because there were no entertaining cycling sites at the time when I started Pez, and so we started approaching the reporting on cycling in an entertaining fashion that no one had seen before. My contribution, I guess, comes from being able to successfully entertain people.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I can also, because I know that your girls are starting to grow up now. And I can also think that you haven't had the chance to think for maybe 20 years. Now there are maybe a little bit more, space to think about what you want to do
Yeah.
now. So maybe it's a time, I don't know, to think about like what your contribution, what you want your contribution to be in this new situation in life. I don't know. What do you say?
One thing that I could see that doing is providing direction. I think there's a lot of people out there who are wondering what direction they're headed in. And I've had periods of this myself where I've wondered, I've watched the landscape in the cycling media business change completely from where it was 10 years ago. And for sure, as my own business has become more challenging and we've faced the whole shift in cycling media, and online media has changed so much from where it used to be when we started. There have been points of going, okay, what direction am I going in now? And there's that place almost of being lost for a while and then figuring out what's the direction. But I think how you phrased it is, what do I want my contribution to be?
Yeah, and I think also like, like when we were talking about this, like learning is winning, like this mindset of learning that actually debunk the myth of winners and losers.
Actually, yeah, let's talk about that. In your book that you're working on right now, you are debunking current performance myths and replacing them with scientific knowledge in the field of performance psychology. And we talked a little about 3 myths specifically, and we talked already about the smart myth.
I used to call it the smart model, because if you think about myths and stories that are myths, there is always some truth within them, but it doesn't mean that it's the whole truth. And it doesn't mean that it's related to reality either. But so by debunking the myths, it's about letting the myths be there, and sometimes use them, but not the whole time, because now when we have been using them the whole time, that makes it a problem.
Tell us, what are the 3 myths
Yeah.
that you are exploring in your book, and then let's just go through those kind of a little bit individually, okay?
Yeah. So the first myth is the traditional SMART model, that says that when you set a goal, it should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And then the second myth is the myth of winners and losers. So for instance, in sports, when you have like really young people, you try to figure out who is going to be the next star, and you try to take away the other ones that you don't believe in. And you have that also in the professional field very much. That this belief of that if you just sort people out, and if you put the winners in one place and the losers in the other place, you're going to be able to to go for the winners, and then you will achieve everything and everything will be so great.
Yeah.
So this is the second myth. And then the third myth is the myth of no pain, no gain. The harder you train, the better you get. And if something doesn't work, you only train a little bit harder or do things in the harder way. So these are the 3 myths.
Okay, good. So then in that case, let's just talk a little bit about a different approach, your ideas on a different approach for each of these.
And we have been talking about the SMART model.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about like this winners and losers, and thinking in a black and white way. it actually becomes like a fixed mindset, because if you believe that you are your achievements, and if you take everything personal, instead of taking the chance of learning from everything that happens, then you won't be able to develop as much as you can. Because actually, I mean, everything that comes to you in life, even though it's a crisis of like, I don't know what I'm going to do in the future, it's an opportunity. It says that something is not exactly as I want it to be right now, and it gives me a great signal of that I have to think in another way, or I have to change something. I don't know what it is yet. So by having this approach that you can learn from everything, you can also develop so much faster.
Okay, so for those people who don't know what it is yet, what kind of things can we do to try and figure these things out?
Well, sometimes it's easier to think about what it's not. So by asking the question, what is it not? You can figure out what brings you pain in life. And from that pain, it's more easy to find what brings you happiness. Because sometimes it's harder to go just directly to happiness. If you are in an unhappy place, maybe it's easier to think about those things that doesn't feel really good, and in the next step start to think about, okay, if this is what brings me pain now, how can I change these situations so that they become, more fulfilling? Or but it's of course very individual, depending on who the person is,
Yeah.
what path is the right way to take.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I believe like asking questions about situations, like for instance, if the field is in work life, maybe you can think about like the greatest experience you've had in your professional life, and try to figure out, okay, what was it in this situation that made me so happy and fulfilled? So also by finding good example from the past can also give a small direction of what the future can be like.
Okay, good. All right. What about myth number 3, no pain, no gain? We've kind of grown up with that, and it used to be on t-shirts, and I'm pretty sure it was advertising slogans selling millions of running shoes and athletic wear over the years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when it comes to sport, of course you have to push yourself. But I think it's a difference between pain and gameness, for instance. Imagine yourself sitting on a bike and you have this gameness. Of course you have sore legs and everything hurts. But it's like the mentality of play, of game, so instead of going to no pain, no gain, if you listen to heart and brain, you will gain. Because most of the time, when you push yourself too hard, and that is the strategy you use, you will, when you feel that you're failing, you will just push yourself even harder. But maybe you need to relax, or maybe you need to, meet a friend, or maybe you need something else. So I believe that if we are too much in no pain, no gain, we will be like in this tunnel, and that will be like the only gear is the highest gear.
In cycling, the idea of suffering has been ingrained in our mentality and our psyche for generations, to the point where, as young cyclists coming into the sport, we are taught to admire and revere the men that have, the riders that have come before us and can suffer the most. And there's this idea that the one who wins is the one who can suffer the most, and this idea of suffering on your bike becomes almost like a holy grail of cycling. But it may not be the right mentality. It's like, really, I don't know if I want to suffer that much. I still want to. It's not fun anymore. Like, I wonder how many people have being categorized into the loser category because they didn't want to or chose not to or couldn't suffer as much as someone else. And it's probably not a good mentality to have.
Well, I believe that if you have one guy who is focusing on his suffering and the other guy is focusing on his like positive vision, on his maybe his breath, or maybe on like things that makes him, motivated and gives him positive energy. I think that this guy who is focused on the positive stuff can endure much longer than the other guy. This because suffering is also something that is very ingrained to our culture. Because I mean, the Western world, we have Christianity as our mindset or cultural mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and suffering and Christianity is very, very close connected. So I think also, even though many countries are very secular, like for instance for Sweden is a very secular country, but still we have like this heritage from our religion that says that suffering is good. So
Yeah,
so you see.
yeah. Suffering is good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that we've just finished the World Cycling Road Championships. They just completed in Switzerland this past weekend. You and I are talking the day after Tadej Pogačar won the men's title with a stunning attack 100 kilometers from the end of the race, which is further than just about anyone's gone. In fact, he completed this massive historical goal of winning the Giro d'Italia, the Tour de France, and the World Championships in one season. He's only the third male cyclist ever to do this in the history of the sport. But he's won a ton of races this year, I think about 23 or 24, most of them from these long-range attacks, which we never used to see in cycling before. But one thing that has stood out for me about his wins and the way he's riding is he appears to be having a lot of fun the way he's riding his bike. He's trying these moves. He's obviously very strong and a lot stronger than the other riders, but he's riding with an exuberance and a mentality of having a lot of fun doing it. And so that to me is, as we're having this conversation about having more fun doing this, all of us cyclists have been watching this play out over the season. The guy who's winning the most is, I think, the guy who's having the most fun while he's
Yeah.
riding, like he's gaming his bike. And you had talked a bit about this earlier too, about going back to motivation of making it fun. How do you advise people to make things more fun?
Well, I think it depends on who the person is, but I want to go back even further. Because if you think about when you were a child and you actually had fun, you were playing, and then time and space just completely, disappeared, and you were just in your playfulness and in your game. This is the feeling of flow. When you are in flow, then it is like you don't feel as much pain as you do otherwise. And as I said, you perform at your best, and you have like all these positive emotions. So I normally don't advise like what people should do, but I can tell you what I have done to make things more fun. So, for instance, in freediving, you're lacking of air, of course, and that isn't very comfortable. That is quite
It's
painful.
quite, yes, painful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But when I know that when I'm under the water, I can, for instance, I can hear a song in my head, like a song that I like. So if I play that song in my mind while I'm diving, that's a playful way of both feeling happy and also at home and satisfied and relaxed. So this is a way of playing, and also, like, instead of focusing on the pain, I can shift my focus. Because when I have a contraction, like, when I need to have some air, there is like a microsecond it's just so tiny, you know, but it's a microsecond of relaxation. And that little tiny microsecond is quite comfortable. So instead of putting my focus on like everything that is painful, that might be 90% of
Yeah.
like the whole thing,
Yeah.
I'm just putting my focus into those 10
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
seconds. And also, instead of, you know, thinking about technique in the traditional way, I can pretend that I can glide like a manta ray, you know? So when I'm under the water, I just think about myself as a manta ray. And when I stretch out, I'm thinking like I'm a cheetah, you know? Because the cheetahs are the one who can stretch out the most
Okay.
of
Yeah.
all the cats.
Yeah.
So this is a way of making things fun, to me at least, and playful under the water. And also I believe that when it comes to competition, we have also a big tradition of seriousness. We believe that you have to focus, but actually you don't. I mean, think about the cycling race. I mean, you have hours to focus. You don't need to focus. You need to relax. You need to save your energy. So, for instance, when we were a little bit too tensed when it came to a free diving competition, me and my team, we used to play like this. I don't know what it's called in English, but you hold your hands like this, and you're tickling the hands, and then you should
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, you know
Yeah.
that
Slap the
play.
other person's hands. Yeah.
Exactly. And by playing those things and by wrestling with each other outside, we entered like this playful state, and that state made us happy, relaxed. So that made us also to perform so much better, because when we came to this situation when it was time for us to really perform, we hadn't lost a lot of energy before, because we were in play and we were in happiness.
It's almost like a perpetual motion machine where you are creating more positive energy that creates more positive energy that creates more positive energy.
Yeah, exactly. And you cannot be afraid and playful at the same time.
Hmm.
You're either in
Yeah.
in fear or in play, you know. So this is also, play can also, if you feel afraid, then play is the best way to just get rid
Mhm.
of the
Yeah.
fear, and to actually be able to be at your best.
Yeah.
Because I think when you are at your best, you're not afraid.
Hmm.
You are in your gameness, and you
Yeah.
want to do something, and you feel strong.
Wow, that's all making total sense to me.
I'm
It's
happy.
it's
I'm
so
happy
obvious.
for
One
Richard.
one thing that I was thinking about though, did you growing up or as a child, did you have outside influence from your parents or friends or family or somewhere else that helped you become a more positive person? And this sort of circles back to my initial impressions of you, is that you just seem to be naturally positive, but is that something that was just you were born with that, or did you learn that?
I think that, well, my grandparents they were very positive. At least my grandmother. I mean, they faced the Second World War. My father was a soldier, but they had like a very positive view on life. But I believe when it comes to me, I have been in periods in my life when I haven't been so positive, but since I have been training a lot of mental training, I think that has changed my mindset to a positive mindset. And now it has been like integrated to my personality. So I think it's a matter of training, actually.
When you and I met, the world was coming out of COVID. And so we were having a conversation about what COVID was like. And you had some, I thought, a really interesting take on what it took to make you happy. You had found sort of a formula for what made you happy and how you used that to survive COVID. I'd like to hear you repeat that because I think it'd be really interesting for readers to hear that. And it had to do with being around people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I started to discover this before COVID, because I started my own business, and then I was a consultant, and I was trying to figure out like my social needs, because if you are at a traditional work, you don't have to think about what kind of connections you need, because you get connections the whole time. automatically. And at the same time, you have like this schedule. You don't have to think very much about your schedule either, because everything is already set. So what I figured out was that, I was starting to do those experiments on myself. I like to do experiments on myself, especially when it comes to psychology, because psychology isn't a fixed knowledge. It's something that you have to try to see what works for you. And then it can be like really potent when you do that, but not until you try it on and see how it works. It will make sense. So then I started to try to figure out like the best weeks I've had, and I noticed that if I talk to a friend every day, or if I have like a coffee with my mother, because she lives very close to me, then that is like my basic, day-to-day social interaction that I need. But on top of that, I also need to be like in a situation where, like in a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get, if I can have like this everyday connection with a friend or with my mother, and I go to a crowd once a week, and a crowd can be either that I'm lecturing, or it could be that I'm going out dancing, or that I go to the gym and I participate with others. And also, if I meet like one person physically, like face to face every week, then all my social needs are, they are there. And I think like this is very individual. I think we all have these kind of needs, but I think it's a difference how much you need of everything to feel happy.
Yeah. No, I thought that was just one of the best pieces of personal road mapping that I had heard from anyone, and it's stuck with me since we met for a couple of years. Okay, so you're working on the book. When will it be out, and do you know where we can get it?
No and no. I'm working on it right now, but I'm like thinking about making it as good as I can, and I want it to be worked through properly. Because I'm thinking like debunking the myths of performance is something that is important to the whole of the Western world. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, we live in a time where we have very big challenges as humanity, and we can't afford not to be performing at our best. We cannot be slaves under these old myths that doesn't make us the best versions of ourselves. So I'm working on it now, and I'm thinking about releasing it within a year.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's obviously stay in touch on this, because when you do publish this book, we would love to have a closer look at it. Thanks for talking to us. It was really good. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure.
All right. Okay, talk to you. Thank you. Bye now.
Take care. Bye.